All right. We've got about 8 minutes left here, 9 minutes. Do you see U.S. agriculture continuing to be the dominant player in the world? Or will these high prices stimulate worldwide production to the point where we're only part of the equation?
Well, I mean, China in many respects produces as much as we currently do right now. I mean, we're at a worldwide market for agriculture. I don't think we dominate the world at all. We are the largest contributor to food aid and humanitarian assistance in the world, and I think that speaks to our value system. But if you're going to be growing if you're going to need to double food production, as Pat says, and feed another 2.5 billion people in the world, we're going to have to find other places to grow it and to raise it, and that means sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia and other places in the world. So what I would say is we need to be engaged in the world. Right now, I'll tell you an interesting statistic. There's been studies gone about U.S. foreign aid, and when people talk about cutting our budget, people always say, cut foreign aid. So I would say, well, how much do you think of our budget goes into foreign aid? And so people would say 25%, 20%, 15%. It says one guy said to me, we ought to reduce it to 5%. I said, well, right now it's less than 1% goes into foreign assistance. And most of that foreign assistance goes into both either military assistance or helping nations become more food self-sufficient. And not all of it is spent the way I'd like to spend it, but much of it produces good results. Just one quick anecdote. I was in Africa last year, and a guy from Tanzania comes up to me and he says, a government official, he says, you are they love us, by the way, there. They see us as a positive influence in sub-Saharan Africa. And they said, you have 3 of the greatest people in the world in America. And I said, who's that? And they said, that's Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush, and particularly George W. Bush. And I said, my God, I couldn't find 10 people in the United States of America who would say those 3 people. And so, to some extent, America's role in the world is more than just dominate, but we still have the technical leadership in the world, the research leadership in the world. I want to go back. If we don't keep our research establishment up, we won't be able to lead in anything.
People all the time talk about Brazil or China, so on and so forth. It's a lot like in terms of our currency. Everybody worries about the deficit and the debt, and we have every reason to, my Lord. 16 trillion and climbing. But still, the reason that people are buying our bonds is because we're stable. And we are a nation of laws. Albeit, we got a heck of a hole to climb out of. And we got to do the climbing. But look at the Eurozone. Look at Brazil. Brazil's not that stable a country. They've got an awful lot of arable land. I mean, it's amazing. You go down to Brazil and you shake your head and you say, well, when is this big explosion going to come? And it has come to some degree. But I think in terms of stability, a nation of laws, people that can predict at least that I'm thinking of CFTC here right now, and I'm not quite sure whether that's that predictable. But I really think in America, we are so blessed, and we take our blessings for granted. But in terms of again, nation of laws, stability, you can plan, or we hope to plan as best we can. I think we're going to be all right.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. And I saved this one for last. Oh, by the way, Dan, I got an email from one of our listeners. He said he didn't know how old you were, but he wanted to know if you ever dated Mae West. That was Pat.
Where would they get Mae West?
I have no idea. Obviously, he knew her. Okay, this is the last question. We've got a little less than 5 minutes, and it's probably the biggest question that we have here. We've just come off of a GOP convention last week. This past week, the Democratic convention. In 2 minutes, tell me what you think this election should be about.
There was an architect in Chicago named Daniel Burnham And he once said, "Make no little plans, for they do not have the power to stir men's souls." And I've always thought that great leaders had big plans, big ideas, like Ronald Reagan and Franklin Roosevelt had big ideas. And I think, obviously the debt and the deficit, have to be addressed in a sensible, responsible way. But, I'd sure like this election to be about, bigger ideas than that. I'd like to see somebody talk about rebuilding our roads, sewers, water systems, bridges that are all old and decaying, and keeping up especially our educational institutions at higher education level, and science and math, and America's role in the world. I'd like to see America continue to be engaged and be a leader in the world. The deficit makes it so difficult to do anything. Our debt is so high and our deficit is so grand, but in the scheme of things, we still are able to do that if we work together. And there was this thing called the Bowles-Simpson Commission. Some of you have heard about that. And the president appointed this commission. He didn't accept it once they came out with the recommendations, but talked about ways to reduce the deficit and the debt. We all have to kind of share in this. It's not just the other guy has to do it. So the best thing I'd like to see about this election is some statement by the American public that they want us to work together to solve our problems. That's the only way we're going to be able to continue to move forward and lead.
Pat?
Well, that's a tough question. I'm struck by the fact every time I come to Kansas, I don't care what group it is or where I go, it could be health care, it could be education, it could be agriculture, it could be energy, it could be lending institutions. I can't go in the room without somebody waving a piece of paper saying, "Pat, what about this regulation?" And most of the time I'm not aware of it. And so I'll find it, and then it's part of the bigger problem in regards to too much government. It is overwhelming. It's been a Katrina of regulatory overkill. With all the best intentions, I would guess, I don't know, people have an agenda in Washington. The people that are coming out and doing the inspecting and doing all of this in regards to the regulatory framework that we have and that touches everybody's life, they have an agenda. They don't come out and take a look at the cost-benefit part of it and say, let's work with you. You're guilty until proven innocent. And I know there's been an awful lot of criticism along those lines, but it's well-deserved. And my staff and I spend a good 60% of the time dealing with what government is doing to you as an adversary as opposed to a partner. And I really think it's time for a good house cleaning. The president himself said that he had an economic an executive order on regulation, and proposed that every agency take a look at the cost-benefit yardstick before they issued any new ones and go back over the back ones. So the problem is there are a lot of loopholes in it. I have a bill to do that. A lot of people have a bill to do that. My goodness, we have to get back to that. Seems to me that we're not going to make any progress until we get again why government to be a part